Well, welcome back, everyone, to another exciting episode of Right Down the Street. I'm Brian Barnett, Mayor of the City of Rochester Hills, and your host for this podcast. For those of you loyal listeners, we thank you. Right Down the Street has been a wonderful experience for us and our amazing production team. As you may or may not know, we finished the last year in the top 25% of all podcasts, according to Spotify. So we're really grateful for those of you who listen. And you listen for one reason. We have great guests, and we've got another great episode for you today. Two folks that many of you know, certainly you know the names, you know the reputations. You're going to get to hear a little bit of their heart today, and I'm excited to introduce them to you in just a moment. But the city of Rochester Hills obviously is a favorite place of mine, as you might guess, and is known for a lot of things. One of the things that we're especially proud of is our penchant for education. We believe strongly in the value of education. We have great public schools in our community, two great school districts. But we're also home to two universities, Oakland University, my alma mater on the west side of town, and right in the heart of our community is our other secondary education location, Rochester Christian University, a tremendously powerful organization with some great people. Two of them really represent the heartbeat of that organization today. I'm excited to introduce to you and welcome to the show coaches Garth and Klint Pleasant. Welcome to the show, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Well, this is not just a meeting of people involved in the community. You are both friends. Klint, our kids graduated school together and we're friends. And, of course, Coach Pleasant, Garth, tremendous respect for you. I was an early attender of Lake North Central basketball camp, as thousands and thousands of kids in the greater Rochester community are. You guys have both been very influential to me and tremendous leaders of our community. Garth, you in particular have been at the many different versions of Rochester Christian University, dating all the way back to 1971. What brought you to this part of the country back in 1971?
Actually, it was 1967 that I graduated from high school, and my parents said I had to go to a Christian school. And a school in Tennessee, baseball coach sent a player up to talk to me, and I decided I wanted to go stay closer to home, so I came to Michigan Christian Junior College. And you just fell in love with the place. And after I graduated, I had the opportunity to come back as a instructor, and a year after that as the basketball coach. Now, it helped that I married the president's daughter.
Helpful hint, pro tip at home. If you want to get into the university or get in good graces, marry the president's daughter. Very smart, Garth. Very good decision. And you've obviously been here pretty much ever since. They can't get rid of you, is from what I hear.
I think they're trying. Now, I mean, I've told sports writers, I say, you won't understand this, but it's been the way that it's been my ministry. It's been the way I've served God every day, working with young people and, trying to have an influence in their lives, and they influence mine too. And so I tell a story when Klint was at Kent State and they were in the Elite Eight. They're Rupp Arena. They're playing Indiana to go to the Final Four. And Andy Katz from ESPN had interviewed Klint. And after the interview, he came over and motioned for me, and I leaned over the railing. And he says, "Dad, you got the best job." I think I did.
Yeah. If for some reason you have been living under a rock, if I didn't say it already, Coach Pleasant, Garth, you retired with 720 collegiate wins, the most by any collegiate coach in Michigan history. Obviously in every Hall of Fame that the state has, and quickly following his steps, Klint, you've already amassed over 250 wins, 259. Maybe there's been more since I read this, but you've been at Rochester Christian University for 13 years already, and maybe more. You had a choice. Obviously, you could coach anywhere with the success that you've achieved. why stay? Why? What is it about Rochester Christian University that has you so connected?
Yeah, good question. Well, first of all, I grew up on campus. My dad didn't mention that he moved us into the dorm when I was a kid. And so I grew up on one of the dorms on campus, and that was great. It was a great way to grow up. And grew up being around my dad, being on the bench. And one of the things that I get to say today, it's even emotional as I think of it, is that I grew up with the players at the college, now university, being my heroes. And now I get to coach, my heroes. And I remind them of that every year. But when it came time for me to go to college, I wanted to get away and do something different. I'm the middle child, and I had this sort of wild hair. And so I said, Dad, I want to go somewhere else and do something different. And I actually ended up playing football in college and at a school in Texas. And then started my coaching career and moved around to several different places. And honestly, Mary, I didn't think I'd ever be back in Rochester. And then through a series of events, my wife and I started a family. We had a child, and we thought, you know what, we want to be closer to home. My wife was from St. Louis. Of course, I was from Rochester Hills, and so we moved back here. And then
that was the last argument that you won.
That was the last argument that I won. And then shortly after moving here, we'd only been here about a month or so, and my wife came down with a horrible illness. And sort of the story that I tell is that I grew up on this campus. I left. I didn't think I would ever come back. And then one of the things that brought me back was, that's the place that took care of me and kind of nursed us through some really difficult times. And so one of the things that I think is neat about my story is kind of full circle. Grew up there, left. Didn't have any plans to come back, and came back, I think, for all the right reasons, and then was able to actually work with my dad, was actually his assistant for a few years. So I'm going on 20 years there because I helped my dad when Rachel was so sick. Sure. And then when my dad stepped away, I thought about leaving. I had some offers to get back at the NCAA Division I level, and the president at the time said, why don't you stay here and just take over for your dad? And so I get to say now that between me and my dad, we're going on this next season 53 years. Yeah. 53 years of one of us. So it's a fun story.
Well, there's, obviously it's a fun story. It's a story punctuated by a lot of success. I know, knowing both of you, that's not necessarily what you judge as the most important measure of your career. But it's sort of like a family business, as you said. I mean, some families run restaurants, some families run insurance companies. You guys run basketball clinics and basketball teams. Klint, tell me one thing about your coaching strategy or your coaching stance that is different from your dad's. And then same question for you, Garth, after Klint.
Wow, good question. So I think one thing that's different is that I think my dad was always a head coach. You were never an assistant. And so I kind of moved out and was an assistant coach, again, at the NCAA Division I level, and then a head coach at the Division II level. What I'm trying to say, so I worked for a lot of different people. And so I think when I came back, I knew I would never survive if I was going to try to be my dad. And there's only one Garth. And so I just had to be myself. But I think I learned a lot from other people. So I think one difference is that, I sort of bring several different vantage points of the game. Sure. And, where my dad's kind of always been his own man for all those years. And I think that would be the biggest difference if I had to say something real quick on the spot.
Yeah. How about you, Garth? What is different about Klint's style of coaching than yours?
Can we each say how many technical fouls we've had?
I'd love to know that. Who's had more?
I have, but I haven't had that many. I probably think in about 38 years, I probably had about 5, deserved maybe 2.
I've had one and deserved about 50.
Yeah.
How you've only had one boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Sorry,
because
back to him.
People, referees think he's okay because they had me.
Yeah.
They just tolerate a little bit more. I think that what Klint said is true. He got to work with Don Meyer, who was the guru of basketball, even though he wasn't a Division I coach. Bobby Knight once said he was the best coach in America. And then he got to work with Ron Hammy at Wayne State. both coaches did things just totally different. And then he went to Tennessee Martin, and then he went to Kent State with Stan Heath. So he falls under the Tom Izzo tree now. And then he gets his head job at Abilene. And so when he became a head coach, I think he had a lot of resources, to choose from.
Yeah.
And I just sort of had to work at it along the way. And Don Meyer really influenced my coaching career a great deal. And I always thought that we ran better practices than anyone. And we went out to Abilene to play when he was at Abilene Christian, and I watched him practice. I said, he runs a better practice than I do. And I didn't think I'd ever say that about anybody. But we are different some in different ways. Practice, we're different.
Who's more competitive?
Oh, he is.
Who's more?
We can arm wrestle.
Who's would you agree? Are you more competitive?
I was pretty competitive.
Yeah. Who's more aggressive in their coaching style?
Probably you.
Yeah. I think the sexy thing to say would be something that's really different, but I mean, I think there's a lot of similarities.
Sure. Yeah.
Again, I grew up watching him coach. Now he watches me coach, but I mean, I would say we're both pretty intense, but I think it's fair to say we're both pretty gentle too. Like we both genuinely love the players we coach. And so we're not afraid to hug. We're not afraid to say, I love you. But if you were to walk in and watch us coach, you'd probably, think we're pretty upset.
Yeah.
I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, if you know what that is. And so I'm very competitive. The only way I can love myself is if I'm, winning and achieving. And so I don't know what the nuanced differences would be.
Well, one thing you certainly both have in common is you've had great national success. You have multiple national championships, which is incredible. And over decades, right? You won your first one in the 80s. You won your most recent one in
2018.
How has the game changed in both your perspectives from when you started coaching to when you left, and maybe when you started coaching to even now?
Well, I think the game is a lot more detailed. Here's what I mean by that, Mayor. I graduated from high school in '67 from Flint, which is a mecca for basketball. My junior year, we were ranked in the top 10 of the state. I went to basketball camp in Indiana. It was the only camp around. I don't think I was ever taught how to shoot. If you're in help position, what foot is forward, things like that. And it's just progressed where it's today, we work on techniques maybe a little bit more. I think it's a faster paced game than when I first started. And the size is different. And so I saw those changes in my 40 years from 1972 until I got out in 2010 or whatever.
Yeah, and certainly the advent of the three-point shot. When my dad first started coaching, there was no three-point shot. And then they brought it in, and I've heard my dad say before that they really utilized it. It was sort of, it was taboo back then, but they sort of utilized it. And then they've moved the line back. But I think to pick up where my dad left off, everything trickles down from the highest level. Everything trickles down from the NBA. And so we've seen that happen here. The access to analytics, the way technology's changed the game, because we can now measure trajectory of shots and we can do research that we certainly weren't doing in 1937 or whenever it was. And then everything is so offensive oriented. It's sort of entertainment oriented. So the shot clock continues to go down, which means we're going to emphasize more offense in a faster paced game because it's more fun to watch. And then things change every year in terms of emphasis with officiating. And so you really have to be pretty nimble as a coach these days and have to be willing to adapt and change. And I think I watched my dad do it. And, even this next year, we're probably going to do some things that I never dreamed of doing 10 years ago.
Now, one of the biggest changes that's happening in the college basketball landscape and really college athletics is the introduction of NIL and the impact. And just down the street, last year, a good friend of both of yours, Coach Campy, had a magical year, getting into the round of 32 and advancing farthest as far as the university's ever gone. And then NIL swept his team and basically emptied his bench. What are your thoughts on NIL? Is it get down to where you could see players move around at your level, and just in general, is it good or bad for college basketball?
Well, I'm old school. Okay, I'm not a great fan of AAU. I'm not a great fan of the portal, and the NIL, I would say these kids make pretty good money. You had a son go to Oakland, right?
Yeah.
Did he get a full scholarship?
Academic, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You had a kid go to state.
Mm-hmm.
Did he get everything paid for?
He did not.
Did he get his Pell Grant back, if he got a Pell Grant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean, I had Camp in my class talking about that, and his kids were making, they got a lot more than the chemistry major did.
Yeah.
And so, people talk about the schools making so much money off of these athletes. I maybe Denard Robinson wearing number 16, or the quarterback, JJ, whatever his number was, things like that. And now they're even, the school can now pay. The rule that just came out.
Yeah.
Well, the schools can now pay. And we're seeing the mega conferences, and again, I'm old school.
Yeah.
I like New Year's Day, there were 4 bowl games. And but change, and we'll see what happens.
Different perspective, same perspective, Clint?
Well, at the risk of sounding like too much of a nerd, there's something about we live in a capitalistic society. And so there's, it's hard to blame somebody for wanting to leverage that, just like, Bill Gates did when he was in college, making a computer in his garage or whatever he was doing, So, these athletes do have a skill set that ends up, impacting the market.
Right.
And so from that standpoint, I get it. One of the beauties about Rochester Christian University is that maybe we're going to end up being the place where there's still amateur basketball. And I think if that happens, that gives us a really neat opportunity, right? I think we're going to see these mega conferences essentially becoming minor league NBA systems, even though they're educational institutions, but that's another podcast.
Right.
But one of the opportunities at RCU is maybe the basketball program at RCU can still be amateur basketball. And for the people in town that want to watch that, and there's a lot of people in town that want to watch that, I think they still really will appreciate it. Now, will it trickle down to our level? Sure it will. But I don't think it's going to be anytime soon in terms of the big dollars. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I still like the idea that I coach at a place that still is kind of hanging on to this is amateur athletics.
Right.
I still think schools like us is true basketball.
Mm.
Our kids are having to pay to go to school.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
They're there because they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
I recruited kids that really didn't have anywhere else to go. Their junior high gym was nicer than our practice facility. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And these are kids that they want to play basketball. They want, or baseball, whatever. And I think it's just true. They're not prima donnas. What are you going to give me? Various things like that. And and I would hate, like camp, what he has to go through. Okay, who am I going to have to replace this year, and things like that.
He lost almost everybody, even his juniors and sophomores, to $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 NIL deals across the country.
There's a balance between the sort of the me and the we, and of course you want to look out for yourself, but there's still a place for no, this is a we thing, and I think at our level, it's still a we team thing.
Sure,
it's in high school. NIL is dropping down to high school.
Yeah. You're coaching now, Klint. What is the biggest misconception that the general fan or just the person that might randomly pay attention to has about what it takes to be a head coach, a collegiate head coach? What's the biggest misconception? Oh,
the commitment, the day in and day out commitment that it takes, how hard it is to keep a group of young men on the same page moving forward to one goal. And then also just the grind of the job. I've heard my dad say it, but I feel the same amount of pressure that Tom Izzo feels. I do. Mm-hmm. It's just important to me as it is to him. Now, I understand he's got to do more press conferences. He's got to answer to probably some donors. But, in terms of the pressure during the game, my heart beats the same way his beats. Mm-hmm. And, the pressure that I feel on game day, wanting to win for the university, wanting to make the city proud. When we win games, you put it up on the city marquee. I've noticed that. Mm-hmm. When we don't, you don't. And so the pressure is real. That grind is real. That commitment is real. And I've coached it. I've coached at all levels, and I'm not. It's not any easier here.
All pressure is self-imposed, I think. Yeah. Where maybe Izzo's pressure at one time was my job. Klint's not in danger of losing his job, that type thing, and I never felt I was. The pressure for us is, self-imposed, and tell him your story about the first game you coached at Kent State. Oh no, the first game you coached at Wayne State, and Ron Hammy. And then the first game you coached.
So I'm coaching at Wayne State as an assistant coach, and life is great. No one's going to talk to me if we lose, right? I just get to coach and do my thing. It's fantastic. Being an assistant coach is the greatest job in the world. I hope I get to do it again someday. And so I'm coaching at Wayne State as an assistant, and the head coach, my boss, is pacing all day. And he's irritated. He's using language he normally doesn't use. He's snapping at me, and then I turn around and he's smoking a cigarette. I'm like, what in the world is he doing? Well, it was game day, and he was a mess. And I thought, well, I'll never be that way. And then the first time I coached a game as a head coach, my best friend shows up, who I played college football with, like my soulmate, best friend. And he's in town, and he's planned out the day. We're going to go have barbecue, then we're going to go do this, and then we're going to go do that. And then tonight I'm going to sit behind the bench and watch ACU basketball. And I'm looking at him like, where's the trash bin? Because I need to throw up.
This is a great day.
This is the greatest thing ever. I'm like, this day is horrible.
Speaking of great days, what did it feel like, Garth, when you realized that after playing 720 games, never a home game, that due to the generosity of some donors and some folks, that from now on and forever, all the games we played at the newest arena in the city, which is, of course, the Garth Pleasant Arena on the campus of the college. What was that like when you see, it's still today, when you drive by it on Avon and see your name on the side of the building?
I'm not trying to play the humble card or anything. I never thought about it not having a facility. I was just happy, to be there. And I had to find a place to play every game. One year we played 10 games in 8 different venues. And it never dawned on me until right before the opening of the first game. And Frank Rewald worked so hard so they could play that last game. And Pat and I drove up from Florida, and I walked in the arena, and it hit me. It did. It hit me. I'm just thinking there, wow. And I want to say something about my name on the arena. I went to the man who had the naming rights that was very, very, very generous. And Rubel said, Garth, Bill wants your name on the building. I says, no. I said, I'll take care of that. And I think I'm a pretty persuasive guy. So I met with him at the Royal Park, and I said how nice it was, et cetera, and he's listening to me. And we get through, and I think we've got him. He says, go tell Rubel I'm not going to give a penny. And then you'll like this. I go out there when they first start breaking ground. Tony Zotis is the guy in charge. And I walk out there, and he's in his little trailer. He comes out. I'm Tony Zotis. I said, I'm Garth Pleasant. He said, I thought you were dead. And then he touched me.
Well, it's a beautiful tribute, and I do know that story that you didn't necessarily want your name on there. Another obviously tribute as we wrap to a close here. Is there any truth to the story? Obviously, you had a film made, a documentary about your life and career, and the rumor around town was that they were trying to get Brad Pitt to play you. But you said it wasn't. You wanted someone more handsome.
He wanted Kevin Costner.
Is there truth to that, or is there?
Yeah, I wanted Clint Eastwood. He's my hero.
You do have a great documentary out there called "Make the Big Time Where You're At." Premiered in April. We actually run it on the station here, and obviously was at some of the things that it's been premiered at.
That was a book by Foster Westerby. "Make the Big Time Where You Are." And I never used what I didn't have as an excuse. Yeah. Just never did. Yeah. Never apologized for anything I didn't have. Yeah. And I don't know if we're out of time, but I could give you a story on that. I've been out of coaching, and they're on a retreat, all the coaches. And I get called up to the admission office. And there's a lady there with her 2 daughters, and one daughter we're recruiting for volleyball. And so the lady looked at me, and she was sort of smugly, she said, she's been accepted to Ann Arbor U of M, not to play volleyball, but as a student. Why should she come here? I said, that's a great question. Thank you. I says, here she's going to be taught by a real professor, not a grad assistant. Here she's going to be in a class of 20 kids, not 250. Here she can see her professor whenever she wants. Her professor's going to know her name, and you might rest a little easier at night knowing that she's at our resident hall and not Michigan's. All those things are true. I'm not going to,
Where'd she go, Garth? Where'd she go?
Michigan. Where'd you go? Oakland.
Well, listen, we always end every podcast, and thanks for giving us a peek into the Pleasant life. We always end every podcast with the same question. I'm going to start with you, Klint, so you have a second to think about it, Garth. But it's a 2-parter, and you have to answer both. If you could go out to lunch or dinner with any person, alive or past, who would it be, and where would you go?
Wow. So I'm a big Pearl Jam fan, and I hope they see this podcast.
I've seen that actually in you.
I'd want to go have dinner with Eddie Vedder. And you've asked me this before, my favorite place in Rochester Hills is my backyard. I love sitting in my backyard. I love grilling out. I love looking at the trees in the backyard and watching the deer go by. I love living in the city. So I would invite him to my backyard in Rochester Hills, and we'd have a long chat.
I hope you'd invite the mayor too, because that would be. I feel like you'd want 3 people there for that. That's great. Garth, yours.
Well, naturally, you'd want to say somebody from the Bible, but I'm going to go for
Eddie Vedder, Jesus.
My dad. My dad. I lost my dad when he. I know you lost your dad when you were 17. You were 17. My dad, I lost him when he was 64. And he was a sharecropper son from southeast Missouri, and came up, got a job in the factory. And at his funeral, I described his life with the word integrity: a man of integrity to strangers, a man of integrity to friends, a man of integrity to his family and to God. And I just like to have, one more Halo burger in Flint with him. It was called Cupie's back then.
Well, it's a great word to leave on, integrity, because I think it's probably a word that people would describe to both, or ascribe to both of you as men who've led programs with integrity. And I know you've always said that your success isn't judged by the rankings or the record, but rather what kind of individuals your team turns out to be as husbands and fathers in 10, 20, and 30 years. Thank you. Thank you for making a difference in the community. Thank you for leading Rochester Christian University and for being a great part of our greater Rochester Hills community. And thank you for all of those who are tuning in and watching in our audience. We appreciate that. We appreciate your support of Right Down the Street, and we'll be back again real soon with another exciting episode. Until then, thanks for tuning in, and God bless.